Dogman and Bigfoot. A beam of light occurred and a portal opened. My name is Brandon Thomas. I host a show called Expanding Reality. It's an amazing journey into the expansion of consciousness, cleverly disguised as a podcast, as the tagline goes. It started the show based on the freaky woo-woo, but of the silver disc phenomena. I was very interested and have been for decades, the idea of UFOs and all things that freaky woo-woo as it is. And so within all of those conversations come in a lot of things. And now that we're to this point in it, and I've been researching it for well over 2 decades now, the conversation of Bigfoots, cryptids, paranormal, near-death experiences, psychedelic experiences, even, they all sort of now, there's a blurred line between where they end and the other one begins in some cases. And so I find Bigfoot to be one of these very interesting phenomena associated with not only the UFOs, but many, many other things. And the speculation on what it could be, what it possibly is, what it's doing here, what people have reported. Is it just fake? Which I don't think so. I think it could be a variety of things. And the way that I look at any phenomena is really at the basis of sort of how I look at reality now, and where my ability to perceive reality and various perceptions lie. And so that's that filter enables me to have the conversation on many different levels and not feel butt hurt, for any better word there, that I don't am not received to my ego's delight that that I was right and someone else was wrong. I hold that so far away from me, it's not even visible. I'm far away from cognitive dissonance in the way that new information presents itself. Let's have a conversation about it. Let's talk about it. And this is why the show's so successful. It's I have no ego in it, meaning that I don't have a dog in the fight per se. If I feel like I would limit myself if I brought all of my own ideas and held on to those very strongly, in the sense that I could be given some amazing information that I could just be shielding from myself just based on my inability to perceive it. So Bigfoot especially is in that category, and cryptids in general. Like, what is going on with this? You see ancient paintings and ancient drawings and stories of all of these creatures that, your mom and dad, or maybe even historians or paleontologists or something, would relegate to just science fiction or just hearsay or just myths and legends and things like that. But really, if you look at it, it's fascinating. It's beyond fascinating, to the point of it excites you so much that maybe that's something deep within your own DNA that knows that these creatures are real, they are connected to you in some way, and then it's a phenomena that you have access to, and would love to be very intimate with you in a lot of cases.
Have you ever had a personal encounter yourself with any
No,
kind of a cryptid?
not that I remember. I'll put it that way. Not that I'm consciously aware of. Yeah. If I have, I've probably insisted that I don't remember. I think that that's my role here, is just to be very objectional and objective rather. And in the same case of UFO or anything like that, I would probably interact with the phenomena and then request to be unaware of it afterwards.
Don't you think that the aliens mimic a lot of the Bigfoot? See it, it's gone, it's there, suddenly it's there, you can't find them after the fact. The aliens um, that I've researched for years. When I got into the Bigfoot filming, I really wasn't interested in Bigfoot, but I got into Bigfoot filming. And the stories just mimic that so much of the alien UFO abductions as well as the alien UFO phenomena. Have you correlated that yourself?
Oh yeah, quite a bit, and even in cases where they say grays or tall humanoids, the tall whites, some Pleiadian type entities, more humanoid, they could pass as humans type things, and then Bigfoot sort of run around together, almost like it's some amazing Justice League or something that we just don't have access to, or some of us have access to, perhaps. And it's amazing. Just recently spoke on Chris Matthews' amazing documentary, forbidden documentary, Occult Louisiana, and it's amazing. So Christopher and I were talking about this, or Chris Matthew rather, we were speaking about how it seems to be like such an interplayed phenomena, because the stories of like a guy named Scott Pace in that documentary spoke about all of these interactions between Bigfoot and Dogman, and then a beam of light occurred and a portal opened, and then two whites walked out after a Dogman sighting. And so we jokingly said perhaps it's some sort of, Earth is some sort of portal dimension where perhaps the aliens, or these, non-extraterrestrials, non-human intelligences, whatever they are, perhaps some have some sort of hierarchy within the companionship and the camaraderie with a Bigfoot, sort of like the, I don't know, Chewie Han Solo relationship, but maybe even more of like a pet sort of a thing. And then maybe Dogman and Bigfoot and a few other of these cryptids are just like goldfish and cats and dogs or something like that to some other race of entities that has access to this place via a technology or perhaps via something very simple that we're just unaware of. And then it opens sort of a portal and they have access to this place. This is why maybe they can disappear, go in, go out, but maybe also it's right here and you just need to step one step to the left, but really your perception is so guided in this dimension that you just can't shake it out. Maybe, or I'm not a fan of the word can't. I mean, it's something you can acquire or learn into, or some people are just born with it and they can just see it. Or you always have it. And because of programming, you kind of dull it on purpose, like your own psyche does this. This is sort of something I feel may happen in the case of screen memories and things like that. Like maybe it's not that whatever they is, have the power to apprehend your consciousness in a way to make you believe whatever they want you to. Maybe it's your own nervous system shutting down or putting a screen memory over it to protect your own psyche because something you're seeing is so at odds with your belief system and your paradigm that it just rocks you to your core and you just wouldn't be able to handle it. And your mind at some level knows the furthest reaches you can take it and just replaces it with an owl or replaces it with a Bigfoot, perhaps, or, because even whatever the phenomena really is or really looks like would appear to you as so fantastic or just even mind-blowing or terrifying. Maybe even a Bigfoot, as wild as it sounds to most people, maybe that's a normal, a really scaled down version of what your mind wants it to be rather than what it really is.
This is the first time I've heard that that it honestly could be something other than what they're describing or seeing. But in their mind, they have to make it something believable. So it's it's a scary phenomena. They're looking at something, and most people have heard at least about Bigfoot. So if it's a giant energetic form of some sort, maybe it's easier to make it a hairy creature in the woods than it would be to deal with that. I hadn't heard that before. That's interesting.
Taking it from the multiple disciplinaries that I sort of look into, near-death phenomena is a big one as well. Some specific, a specific case rather, there's many, but some specific cases as far as that's concerned. Psychedelics mirror this as well, but let's do one near-death case. 3 individuals pass over to the other side in a car wreck accident that flipped over in water and then they all drowned at the same time. Now, they were revived, resuscitated, and all 3 survived. So amazing. But all 3 of them, not just one and then 2, all of them had experiences of making contacts. There were clear similarities, which you'll find in UFO cases, paranormal cases, Bigfoot cases, all of these things that are clear similarities. But again, when you're looking at the Thomas Young experiment, you're thinking, well, anything I look at, I have the ability to affect it the way I perceive it. So really, are they expecting to find tracks? Are they expecting to, like, maybe it's a huge claw of a dinosaur, horrific monster, and then when you look at it, it's a Bigfoot track, which is still amazing, but it changed based on your ability to perceive its believability for you. And so, I mean, and this is all just maybe supposies. Like we're picking a field of supposies here. I just play with the ideas, but it is interesting when you start bringing other ideas into it because I find that some of the conversations can be limited, but that's fine. Like that you need, I don't find it a problem for the expansion of consciousness for it to be so in a lot of cases, like for there to be camps, for there to be folks that just hunker in and they say, no, this is what I'm not number one studying on, and I'm not going to necessarily entertain any disciplinary and external disciplines for now. And it's all temporary. Like maybe they come into it later, but they hunker into this one idea and they say, this is where I'm at. This is my camp. And here's where I'm at with it. And I'm not budging from that. And then they'll sit on that rock and that's fine because you can find so much out from those people because they're so focused on such a micro part of it. Maybe one case, maybe one instance, all of these things. And I kind of sort of don't feel like necessarily these people are lying or anything like that. Like, again, that's why the show's so successful is because I feel that everyone out here is number one, a piece of me. Like I've seen me in everyone's eyes since I was 18 and Conversations with God book by Neil Donald Walsh. And so from that point, I've just sort of seen it as they're mapping our consciousness from their perspective, which has everything to do with everything, the way they see the world, their paradigm, their understandings, their limiting beliefs, their everything. It's just a myriad of checklist of things that's where they're at right now with the information they have at the time. And it's interesting then to bring this awareness into when you hear or receive reports of extraordinary phenomena that some folks may sit there and say, "Oh no, this is bullshit" or whatever, but really, there's something to it. There could be something fantastical to this, and these people are just, if nothing else, they were moved by it and they were changed by it. People are so ready. I find that there's a vast majority of folks really ready to be more wowed and more believed by a near death experience than they are a Bigfoot story. And but again, I find that they're so similar in a lot of ways, and that there's a lot of patternistic qualities or something extraordinary. People are usually changed after. But again, this falls into, there are many things here in this realm that facilitate that trauma, near death experiences, again, UFO contact, paranormal, excuse me, psychedelics, even like all sorts of things can get you just being quiet, breath work. All sorts of things can get you in these states of connection to where you're open to receive sort of what's really going on around you. And when you dull the noise and you're able to sort of see it, then amazing things happen. And I feel that a lot of people in these states of the woods or in something like that, some of them are hunters, not necessarily always, but they're in the woods having an extraordinary experience with nature. And if you're hunting, you're usually hyper vigilant. So you've got a different energy to it. Also, you're also, I feel, only going to witness what you're kind of ready to see, but also ready to take you to the next step. It's sort of, I have this theory on missing time, that these sort of mini interactions invite you in deeper. If you think about the concept of missing time conceptually, like this idea that I walked into the woods, I saw Bigfoot, and 2 hours went by, I don't know what happened, and I was home and everything was fine. And or the Betty and Barney Hill case, whenever they came home after their UFO encounter, and then there were like leaves on the front on the table by where they dropped their keys, showing that it was an interesting sort of way that they would, like, why would you do that? It's like you dropped your keys, picked them up with a bunch of leaves. And so it's a real zombified state or whatever. But this idea of missing time, the fact that there is time unaccounted for you, calls you to investigate it. Just like I saw a footprint in the woods, it calls me to investigate it. I heard this whooping sound and I felt rocks hitting my tent whenever I was camping out one night. And I saw these signs for Bigfoot. So I've got to investigate it. There's something compelling about these mysteries and about your own curiosity, that if you follow it, there's some incredible things here to look at.
Well, I find it very interesting also that once the idea of Bigfoot becomes more into the consciousness of the person, they start hearing the sounds, they start seeing the footprints. I mean, surely they were always there, but they just didn't pay attention to it, which is true of all of us. In most walks of life, if we're looking for something, we'll usually find it. If we are more aware of it, we will acknowledge it. And that seems to be true in this case. Some different things that you were talking about before, though, I want to bring this back to, which I've done several interviews lately where they are discussing Bigfoot more on the fairy realm. It's like the protector of the wood. It's more of a wood fairy. Have you run into that?
Absolutely, and love this idea. Like, here's another thing about me. I'm okay if the world is flat and round at the same time. I think it's fine. I think this is a realm of potentialities and possibilities that you yourself render through a torsion field that constantly renders your environment as you expect to perceive it. So let's say, for instance, your card's only blue or the color that it is because you choose to memorize it that way and expect to see it that way every day. If you play with this idea, you'll really find that your reality is way more flexible. You'll move stripes on clothes, things like this. And so in this whole cast of characters that we find in the woodland fae, in I'm gonna bring UFOs into it because they tie so much in, because they have changed over time, just like fae have changed into more of like grays and aliens. Maybe they were described as fae and things like that in certain regions, locations, but they've sort of morphed into more of this new icon of this new god, if you will. And this is where Diana Pasulka, in her book America Cosmic, calls this places on Earth like Roswell's a hierophany, right? So it's a new religion. It's a new way of revering something, and a hierophany would be a place on Earth to where the gods came. Delphi is another one of these places, many around, but Roswell is an example for the UFO community. So where the Patterson Gimlin film was shot, that's a hierophany for Bigfoot people, right? That's a big place to go. And so with these energies and with these places, I could philosophically absolutely go down the road that it's all psychosemantic, and we could talk about Jacques Vallée and J. Allen Hynek and all these people who say that you probably create your whole world by your mind and all of that stuff, and that's awesome. But I find also that there's an experiential nature to this place that allows for whimsy and woo woo and fun and awesome, and that's what I'm here for. I'm here for the play. I'm here to my core mission is to give people back to themselves, and within that, that's why we have the show that we have. Is we're able to ask questions, inspire critical thinking and these types of things. And we do it by talking about Bigfoot. Just speaking with you here today, I've probably got 6 more theories about Bigfoot you've never heard. And it's just simply because I pull multiple discipline areas and modalities into this and listen to all of the stuff because there's so many commonalities if you're not buried into one, which is fine. Again, I revere all of it. I think it's all wonderful. But where I'm at with it, Fae play an important role in being these revered spirits of the forests, of these sacred areas where they're forests are magical places anyway. These shires, these amazing places of nature where when you're in it, you feel magic. And so you may have anthropomorphized a creature, but I also feel that there's a lot more going on in this exact realm, this place, this reality, whatever you want, that you have access to than you're being told. And I feel that these things are left in ancient texts, in stories about Fae, in old UFO accounts, and people saying, yeah, I got this Bigfoot and we're trading sticks and marshmallows and stuff in the woods. Like, that's incredible. There are so many amazing possibilities to this place that if you're really open to them, you're going to experience them in magical ways. Some people, just regular people not interested in this stuff, will go out into these same areas we're speaking about in the forest and nature and feel this reverence and not know why. They'll escape their cubicle after months and get out to the woods, for this happenstance thing to treat themselves to nature, and their soul will just feel it, and they won't know really possibly how to connect to it, what's going on. But people who are really into this and revere nature, when you go out into these magical places, you're exposed to even more magic, and you're allowed to view it through your ability to believe, so what you're capable of receiving. And again, I really feel that it's very subjective. So back to the near-death experience, all 3 people had 3 completely different experiences. They all met entities and then were told that they couldn't stay there and then had to come back. 2 were religious and 1 was just family. So the thing about that is all got the same message. All were walked through the same scenario, but greeted by different characters, and the scenarios were different realms or entities. They suited the character that they expected to see. Some people, whenever, if they're very evangelical, when they have what people would refer to as a UFO contact, they'll call it an angel. If they have a paranormal, that same person has a paranormal event, they'll call it a demon. So it's their perception that will guide how they interpret whatever they're experiencing. And I find it very interesting within the Fae as well, back to Bigfoot, back to any of these cryptids, that there's a possibility that they are literal tulpas, literal egregores, literal things that, because stories got passed down, maybe from looking at the stars at night and just sitting around a campfire, maybe somebody saw a mangy coyote one time, embellished the story, and all of a sudden this story gets passed around campfires. But the power that we have as individuals that I don't feel most people are aware of, especially in groups, especially in group think, then you can literally create and manifest physical things. There have been studies and seances done where there's an egregore, I want to say his name was Tim or something like that, but these 8 psychics sat around a table and actually manifested, is all well documented, manifested an egregore, an entity. They made it up. They didn't call something in out of a book that already had a name. They made up its characteristics, what it would look like and everything. So then the question is did something come through and animate a body to mess with them, or did they really create this thing with their minds and animate and walk around, and it's still apparently like on the loose? It just has a life. It runs around and lives and does its thing. It's ethereal, so it's not necessarily physical. But again, to what Bigfoots and Fae and things like that may be, and maybe these manifestations we're able to create in certain pockets of areas or at certain times, or if we're a certain vibrational match. And then there's something that we have access to and can witness and enjoy and bring us magic. It's all around if you're willing to look at it.
I used to know a woman who, as a child, lived close to a forest area, and her what she referred to, her family and her childhood friends were all of the forest creatures, and not necessarily the squirrels, the rabbits, but all of these entities that lived there and were became part of her world. It was just a natural phenomena for her. And it started very young. And I think at a young age, we probably have more perception of that and we grow kind of away from it as we grow older. But another question I had, and you're talking about, our perception as we are interacting with this lays over the reality that we see and perceive. But don't you think this is also true of people that just simply shut the door on any possibilities of Bigfoot existing?
There's a great question. There's a beautiful bundle of nerves in your mind, in your brain back there, called your reticular activating system, your RAS for short, such as how I'm going to refer to it. Your RAS functions for things, melatonin, sleep regulation, things like that. But the one I'm most interested in is when it has to do with your perception. The definition for the reticular activating system's function when it comes to your perception is that it filters out useless information to highlight or present useful information. And what that is that's a subjective look at your paradigm, and based on your beliefs and experiences, what you believe is possible, not only for you, but for the realm around you. But also based on your experience of what is possible, meaning now even if you're challenged with new information, you're gonna jump back to this and possibly blow right by you. This is why there's a few different examples on this. So your nose, for instance, is always visible to you. Your reticular activating system blocks it out. You don't have it in your field of vision, even though it is clearly visible to you at all times. The reason for that is because it's useless. Like, you don't need that. You know it's there. You know how far away it is from you. It doesn't serve you in any survival capacity or any knowledge seeking capacity to be aware of that information constantly. So it's useless. Therefore, so is walking in the woods. If you are walking in the woods and you find Bigfoot to be a waste of your time, you find the type of people to be repulsive because the people you associate with find them repulsive. There's a lot of what we call the entourage effect when it comes to the psychology of this kind of stuff. Then you will find it. You won't even see it. A Bigfoot could be standing right next to you, and your reticular activating system will absolutely filter that thing out because it doesn't have to do with your story. Think of it like this whole place is a choose your own adventure game, but it's very tailored to what your storyline is. Now, whenever you get out and you start looking at Bigfoot stuff, you start meeting Bigfoot people, you start going out into the woods, you start getting maybe a little more fresh air, getting a little more exercise, and maybe you have an experience that you would consider something transcendental that you would refer to as Bigfoot. But you're not going to get it if you're in a movie of 9 to 5, the government's the government's doing is important, and that's what I'm going to focus on instead of my family. To some extent, there's a bunch of amazing things going on around me, but I choose to focus on what's on TV, what the people at work want to talk about, what sports team wins, whatever. Bread and circus. Okay, so if you're entertained by that, no, you don't have access to Bigfoot. And if you do, it's for some incredibly amazing reason. And there are all sorts of splinter ideas that go into soul contracts and all sorts of stuff with this. But if we follow that, then no, traditionally, you're not going to have access to Bigfoot. It's not in your paradigm. It's not something you're seeking out. This needs to be something for you. And I really feel that. Now, again, whether you're aware that it's for you or not is a whole separate thing that is an absolutely fascinating intellectual conversation. But to be very clear about it, I feel that there are times when someone will be standing there, see a UFO, person right next to them, do not see a UFO. They're not a vibrational match for that experience. Now, they're a vibrational match for their friend standing next to them that saw it, to then feel validated in the fact that their friend was a little off, or that maybe they should move on, and maybe they've overstayed their welcome in the friendship, or maybe, man, they have drifted apart a little bit. And this is further confirmation. Everything serves a purpose. And then for that person that had the UFO experience that was next to the person that didn't see it, they get further validation in the fact that they were already a vibrational match for it, aware or not. And then it further sends them into a mystery, it's a pivot point for their life. It's a choice point, right? And that's okay. That's where maybe these two people diverge, and it's simply based off this one instance that one person had access to and one did not. Now, you may say, did that happen, right? If a tree falls in a wood. So if one person's claiming that they saw something, the other's claiming that they did not. But the impact of the event, either way, has an impact in physical reality, as it did in the relationship we just lined out, then it matters. It's real. So it honestly doesn't matter if it's real. It gave meaning to a situation. And that's ultimately what I feel this is about. The way in which it manifests is up to you, honestly. I really feel it's up to you.
And it does impact people's lives. Many people who have an actual sighting, or what a lot of people call encounters, regardless of what it was, or if it was a real phenomena or something that was, within just an energy field within them, it certainly has a tremendous impact upon them internally, or for many people it does anyway. And for many, they continue on obsessively, almost trying to validate that experience that they had. How do you feel about that?
I agree with it 100%. Same thing in psychedelic experiences, near death experiences, paranormal experiences. You'll have people quit their jobs, move across the country for any number of the things we're talking about here, completely leave a partner, vibrationally match out of alignment with a partner, and then they end up separating to their friends and family, all of these things. They end up removing the old identity to become and embrace the curiosity that leads them into ultimately their new identity, which then, therefore, the curiosity and the journey was itself the cocoon butterfly sort of thing, right? And so if it wouldn't have happened, if they would have been surrounded by a support group in which this was absolutely validated, then they wouldn't have taken the turn that they took. Each of these stories is so beautiful because of the little nuances and redirects that all of us take. But in our realm, we have the advantage of this beautiful phenomenon known as the phenomenon. I really do feel that it's the same thing. Maybe you want to, if you want to call it that, it's sort of the same force or energy that's just wearing different masks. It's in my mind sort of a fog that's pervasive around here, and it presents itself in whatever number one you're ready and believe to see based on your paradigm and your reticular activating system, and then also what you are a vibrational match for, meaning like the manifestation technique of that you don't get what you want, you get what you are. You have this embodiment of characteristics, and so within that comes this amazing thing called Bigfoot, and maybe a paranormal event too. And again, to this Scott Pace guy, he's got little woodland creatures hanging out with him, dog man, Bigfoot, uh, 7 foot tall entities beaming out of the sky and walking around. It's a menagerie of awesomeness, and it's ramped up. He's now having dreams that he's got missing time, and then the next day he'll remember. This is all in Chris's documentary. Highly recommend y'all check it out. The next day he'll remember that he was, or have memories of walking through caverns and being introduced to mantis beings, and by this Bigfoot friend of his that he called Stevie Wonder, because he would poke out from the trees, sort of like Stevie Wonder does. And so he named this Bigfoot Stevie, and's walking around underground meeting mantis and grays and all of this. So it's an awesome, awesome question. Like, what is really going on here? Is this all your mind messing with your mind? Is it a simulation? Is this real stuff? And then in that case, what is real? Is it tangible? Is it an idea just as real because it has just as much impact? And can you literally create physical beings that have a physical impact in what you would call the world around you? That's really just maybe some sort of hollow deck of your desires, but also within that's the discovery of how to use it. It's sort of like there's a user's manual period that you need to go through where everything sort of sucks, I guess, if you want to put it that way. And you just sort of embrace the suck, and then you start to get your sea legs, as it were, and you start to navigate this place. And then it becomes really, really interesting. And the whole time woven into pop culture, books laying all about people you could just bump into if they're willing to talk about it that have these exceptional experiences. And it's just such a cool, flavor to add to this realm. It's such a cool spice to add to the mix.
What do you think about Bigfoot as being, I guess, a liaison between, your own personal destiny and what is happening to you? I think you've already sort of answered that, but
it's a great question. I'll answer it a little bit differently, though. It's sort of the gateway drug to the phenomena. You have several of these. You have some, again, missing time. You have just a glowing light in the sky, nothing that you can make out, but you know it wasn't a satellite. There are these from a distance type things that really safely invite you into something that's amazing and miraculous and mysterious and all of that. And so, yeah, I would absolutely say that Bigfoot's I wouldn't say it's an easy one, but it is sort of an easy one. It's a gateway. It's the marijuana of like conspiracies and stuff. It's just the first step into the mind-blowing stuff. But it's mind-blowing in itself. And so it's cuddly, it can be native, it sort of resembles us in a way, because then we're told through evolution that we came from something like that. So maybe it's a version of us. So already there's sort of this empathy there. even though I find that some, the reports of the reptilians, obviously the mantis and then grays are bipedal, there's still a difference in it being cuddly and big. And there's, movies made about it. Harry and the Hendersons, for God's sakes, that I think planted the seed in my mind, at least, that this was a different thing to look at. And I saw that as a child. I won't watch it again, actually, because it's sad. I don't like watching stuff that makes me sad, like Land Before Time, stuff like that. Anyway, but that plants a seed of empathy in the mind of people. And it's sort of something, it's not Dogman. It's not this scary snarling thing. We don't ever really hear of Bigfoot maulings. They're not depicted as terrifying. And when they are, it's sort of cool. It's like the Bigfoot, but he plays metal guitar as well. It's sort of badass, but it's not necessarily what we go. All right, he's cuddly too. I don't feel that it's. I feel initiator is a great word for it. I don't feel that it's as heavy, if you will, as sort of some of the other implications for some stuff.
It doesn't have that coldness like the reptilians or even an alien look. It seems so indifferent. And there's something about the Bigfoot that you can actually kind of cross over into, oh, like the bear, or something that's actually a real creature of some sort, even though they can be very scary. They can also in our minds be so I like that term. It's the gateway.
Yeah, I got a fun one. I was going to say that to the what they may be in relationship to, let's say that Bigfoot, let's just have some fun with this, some supposies. So let's say that Bigfoot is sort of a subservient or a pet, okay, and a revered family member, but just a different species, sort of like our dogs or cats of, let's say, a 7 foot tall white, okay, and they're in doing their thing in their home, and oh, Bigfoot needs to go out, okay, he needs to go pee, just like your dog does. Now, instead of like going out with a little baggie and stuff like that, they're an advanced civilization. They hit the dog door, which is a portal to the woods in upstate in the Pacific Northwest of the US. Bigfoot goes out, does his business, knows when he needs to come home, and then just disappears. Maybe this is why they vanish. They're sort of called back automatically. And maybe this makes for an interesting mess on the other end sometimes, comically, if they're not finished up or something like that. So to this point, maybe then you could say that they're just sort of something else's pet that's wandering around out here that really is just as amazed to see us as we are to see it in some cases. Now, there's other elements to this that I find absolutely fascinating. There's a guy named Asher that I'm pen pals with sort of on our website. He's just a dear friend of mine. And he brings up an amazing point about Bigfoot. What if him as an entity, this is separate than our world is just Bigfoot's backyard to poop in thing. Dogman, and any other cryptid, by the way, would apply in that realm. Asher has this theory that perhaps they're right brain specifically operating. And this is a fascinating one because if you think about this, they don't have any left brain attachment to anything. So, like structures, rules, limitations, perhaps feelings that they can't use their powers of invisibility, cloaking, dimensional travel, any of these things, perception, alteration. Like maybe they can apprehend the way that you see them because they're so right brain and creative that they can mimic in a pattern your own brainwave that we don't even understand about because it's consistently right brain operating only. This is a fascinating theory. It's things like that with this, and I'm just like, man, I like that perhaps it's a hominid that's been here for a very long time. I like that there may be caves. I don't mind that it's a Bigfoot that uses a portal to come poop here. I like also that it's maybe just a creature that's very from here and then still just, again, right brain operating and only operates out of this very creative and so therefore fluid and non-rigid or non-limited in the same physical way or even idealistically that we are as we're trained to be that way, right? I feel that that's why we don't necessarily see people flying around and stuff, but that we will very soon is those limitations are just being evaporated. So in another case with Bigfoot, you can think that yes, it could be sort of just a hominid that's been roaming around here. It could be part of the alien gang, let's say. It could just be another entity or a flunky or a robot in a lot of cases. We presuppose a lot when we see another creature that it's a biological entity. It could be a complete cyborg. And I don't know. I don't mind the mail for people if they want to write in and saying that maybe it is a cyborg. Actually, I think it'll inspire some really cool art. So I'm really looking forward to that bit of it. But also, if you could think about Bigfoot, not only in the realm of some sort of paranormal entity, not only in the realm of some sort of like jinn shapeshifter, that it's a shape-shifting entity that just presents itself that way because it's in that area. And that whenever it's flying through the sky, now it's a UFO because it flies through the sky now. And maybe this is what dragons and all of these things were. I really feel that there's sort of a slip in time here, and that as we've progressed and the ideas of modern technocracy and things like this have progressed and really buried a lot of the history, because history is really just his story, right? So when they bury a lot of that, I think some of it absolutely works its way through the cracks, like Dogman, Bigfoot, the Fae, these entities that come from the sky, these dragons, Quetzalcoatl, things like this, that they may have been, and even chimera stuff like that, that they may have been actual entities that were here running around doing stuff, and then we drove them to extinction, or something happened in the changeover between humanity's rise and when pterodactyls were still flying around, and they just shot them all with muskets and things like this. I find this whole thing very interesting in that it the official story even as magical as it is, it still presupposes quite a bit. And so I think that there's still a lot of room for possibility in anything, and especially with the Bigfoot.
Well, I've always seen also that as culture changes, as as our lives move and progress and change, that's going to be reflected in a lot of our the trends, the things that come, especially like the UFO stuff. I noticed that there was a huge interest and change in the way that we saw UFOs after like Star Wars, and even before that Star Trek, and it places it in your mind in a different way. And by noticing that it's very trendy right now for this Bigfoot creature, to be in every aspect. You can't go into a gift shop without seeing Bigfoot stuff, and so it's very trendy right now. So there's something about Bigfoot, I think, that is definitely a gateway again, like you said, into something. But I think it's a shifter in some way in culture. I don't know exactly where that's headed. Do you have any ideas on that?
I think things are just going to get more and more revealed and amazing. I feel we're going through a time of illumination, and Armageddon just means to reveal, right? Revelation, to reveal. It's just the uncovering. And so with that would be all the uncovering of the things that, again, I feel that there is a deliberate program here that I don't feel there's a bad guy. So I'll just be very clear on that. But I do feel that there's a program here that inspires creativity, and it does so in a myriad of ways. And that creativity has led us to a point where it has squashed all of those things deliberately for the sake of the experiment, let's say, for a period of time, to where it was so buried that by this great illumination, it would be so brought to light that all of this was going to come back to light anyway. Because I don't feel that this is anything new. I feel it's going to be new to a lot of people who are experiencing stuff like this for the first time, that again have spent their life in a cubicle and on a sports app, that this is going to be a different experience and a change for them. But for folks like you and I who have been questioning, who've been looking outside, who would have seen the UFO if there's two of us there, that kind of folk is really seeing that the veil is going to get very, very thin, and has already. If you haven't noticed, the sun feels very different and is changing. The moon is doing some wobbly, weird stuff, which the moon is always, I've always been suspect of that. And then you look around at all of the reports and all of the, I get fakes and things like that, but there are so many things that are being presented that are so anomalous that, again, it doesn't matter if they're true or not. What's interesting is the buzz that they have, the inspiration that they've given people, that there's more to this place than you're being told, and the illumination of not only all the horrific atrocities that the governments around the world have been perpetrating and all of that, as those come out, again, being brought to light because the sun is brighter now, literally shining light on everything, then so too will our ability to perceive different entities. And it needed to come out this way so that the structures that we leaned on as support structures, that were authority figures, as they dissolve and become very self-evidently horrific, very violent, very anti-humanitarian in every way you can imagine, as those things become available, then there's going to be sort of a void to fill as far as an authority figure goes. Now, I've always been under the pretense to make sure that you don't look outside of yourself for leaders. And I feel that the movement and the Bigfoots and the paranormal and everything coming to light, and this being unstable and that being unreliable, but this being so interesting and now being presented and being accepted, is sort of a new way to look at independence, and sort of a new way to see yourself researching things, because you're already so attracted to something that the thing you're already finding so unappealing and actually find a very big trauma experience with is been the opposite of it. And not only to that, gaslit you for and told you and lied about it. And the stuff that's coming out with the UFOs now and stuff. Well, you're telling us we could have had free energy forever. And so what about all the wars? What about all the people that die because you set the grid off because it's too hot? All of these questions start to pop up in the minds of the folks that have given all of their faith over to systems and put these up at pedestals. And then you have an amazing Bigfoot encounter. And so it's either talk about this and continue on putting faith and energy in that, or let's research something that inspires our creativity, now has a growing community of people that we're not alone, and that it's a warm place where we can grow and share together, but move society and culture forward away from very toxic ideas that part of their modus operandi were to keep these things away from you for selfish reasons.
And I think it's also fascinating that, Bigfoot for some people just appears like a physical thing, and UFOs do too. And for other people, they're there in their living room suddenly and alien appears. And I don't know of anyone who has Bigfoot just appearing in their living room, maybe a couple out there. But it's like it appears, it disappears, it seems like it's perhaps guiding us into a different reality, and one that is going to probably die very slowly because we are so attached to seeing our reality in a physical context.
I agree with that. It is going to be a change, but just like any good psychedelic experience, number one, the occupant that goes into that experience knows that there's no off switch. You're in for the ride. And number two, there is an element of it's a little bit too much. It's a little beyond what you can handle, but that's there on purpose. That mechanism of holy shit is there on purpose. It needs to be, because it wouldn't make the impact. It wouldn't get you into the hyper state of hypersensitivity where all the magic happens. This is also where you get your most intuitive gift from. Now, again, there's some horrible ways to bring this about, or some, let's say, unsightly ways that are that people will perpetrate that through, like trauma-based mind control, any sort of trauma, things like that. But there's a flip side to every coin, right? And there's either opposing energies in everything, or balanced energies rather. And so depending on which one you choose, you will experience that. But as this level up occurs, as we continue to move forward into this great illumination, this whatever this is, it has ramped up in such a way that you can't ignore these things anymore. And so the things that were always around, by the way, that we know were always around, are now being presented in a way where we're like, finally. Some of us don't believe it, especially the UFO stuff, because when it's coming out, we're like, bullshit, the government's lying. Now that they're finally saying something, right, we're like, we don't believe it. But that's for good reason as well, and I find that to be a beautiful thing, actually. And then when you're presented with Bigfoot or anything else, then you look at it and you're really given an opportunity. These are choice points. You could say, okay, well, I'm going to perpetuate this idea of this boring reality where there's no magic in my life, and that's just my energy to bear, and that's my energetic signature, and that's what I'm going to participate here. Absolutely cool and awesome. Have at it. You know what I mean? There's no right or wrong way to do this. I feel that this life, or this experience, this game, this simulation, whatever it is, at the end of each branch, fruit bears, right? There's fruit on the end of every branch of a fruit tree, and so too is this experience. There's no like wrong way to do it. There's interesting and fun and amazing and exciting ways, like looking into the Bigfoot phenomena, like being excited about that there's more magic to be had here and experienced, and look forward to that, whether you ever do or not. The journey of experiencing the potentiality that this place is so amazing is enough. It's powerful and it's fun.
Yes, and it's a mystery, and I think mysteries is what draws, the mystery of it is what draws us in.
Absolutely.
It's the Oak Island of
Yeah.
they just
Yeah.
keep looking and looking and looking, because there's hope that there's something there. I think with Bigfoot also, there's just a large, like it keeps you searching, it keeps you looking, it keeps you wanting to have more answers. And with that kind of a mindset, of course, you do have more of an open mind.
You do. I think what's really occurring is that all of this stuff has been accessible to us. We've had the knowledge of it, we've had it, but we're scared to experience it. There's a there's a thing about healing, right? These people who are like, oh, I'm healing, I'm healing, I'm healing. Well, are you ever not healing? Is there a point to where you get to it and you're like, man, I'm just enjoying, I'm receiving, I'm here, I'm doing great. I refer to Alcoholics Anonymous with this, and if you've put alcohol because of that, outstanding. But one thing I disagree in that is whenever they continue to call themselves alcoholics 30 years after they've not had a drink. you're perpetuating the idea that this is an attachment to you. So some people as well in the pursuit, I'm a seeker, right? I'm looking for Bigfoot. We're hunting Bigfoot. Well, that's an activity of experience in itself. Uh, There's a neurolinguistic program example that I use, and neurolinguistic programming is just something I'm a huge fan of because of how aware I am of how aware I feel that your words create your reality with your speech. So being mindful of those has been a very important to me. So the distinction between like what you're able to actually perceive and then what you're able to listen to and perceive are massively different things. You're able to sit with such an expansive concept by yourself with these ideas, but then to turn around and say, um, we're going to continue the search and we'll never get answers and we're going to continue the fight. Well, these are all things that are chosen experiences. They're journeys in themselves that require perpetuation. You can't be finite in these if those are your intent. One of the examples is whenever somebody says trying, I say you're not a triceratops, you're a deuceratops, right? It's not mine. It's a meme that came out, and I just thought it was amazing and adorable because it makes the point. What if the only reason that it hadn't come out, Bigfoot hadn't just appeared in your room or anything like that, is because we don't want it to, because our joy comes in the pursuit of maybe feeling like we'll get, but really, if you ask most people right now that hunt Bigfoot, if they came across a 15-foot Bigfoot in the woods, they'd probably shit their pants. And the reality of that is that it's because it's maybe not getting it. You know, it's there are examples all around, as above, so below. The relationship game, whenever you pursue and pursue and pursue and pursue, and then you finally get someone, or then it's it's not what you thought it was going to be, then the passion dies, and really the passion was in the pursuit. And so then you could say, as a whole, is the phenomena community, UFOs, Bigfoots, Fae, any of it, ready to welcome the actuality of that into our experience? And I think that's a very important question. There's a lot of people who have money trauma issues because they won't allow themselves to be happy with money. There's a lot of people who don't feel worthy to receive good things. Therefore, they perpetuate a cycle of stagnation or doubt or drudgery or anything like this because they choose that state. So if we're constantly hunting Bigfoot and looking for the answers, these are all verbs. These are all action oriented words that require that they continue. You know, we haven't said we're out to find. You know, we're searching for the truth in this, and then that presupposes as well that there is a truth, which is fascinating to me. The thought that maybe the reason we don't have it is because we constantly make up new truths, and every time you ask a question, it must be answered. So with every new question, maybe a reality, this situation occurs in reality where it's just out of reach now because it must be, because there's more to answer. There's more gaps to fill in the experience for consciousness' sake. And so maybe that's why we haven't seen it or been validated by it, is because we really deep down at a subconscious level choose the verb of doing or looking or seeking rather than of actualizing and receiving.
I think that is true. Maybe a lot of the people that are looking, they're looking for that piece of evidence that will satisfy the world as a whole, that these things are actual physical creatures out there. And I remember back many years ago when I first started looking into the UFO phenomena, a lot of the same concept. You know, you look to science, you look to all of these, things that might validate the possibility that these things are real and where they're coming from and what they are. And as time has gone by, not only the UFO phenomena, but also the Bigfoot phenomena, they mimic one another, like I started this whole process with. They mimic one another in that they may be so elusive in so many ways that we will never have that hardcore physical evidence that we're looking for. And, because just the nature of the way our worlds interact just doesn't accommodate that.
Yeah, 100%. It's something that it's just like world peace, right? It won't be achieved until we're ready to feel worthy of world peace, until we feel that we don't look for leaders outside of ourselves. We tend our own garden. Like these things that we talk about on the show are to empower people to strive for their ideal, best, and greatest and grandest self. And that's sort of what I feel the phenomena offers us as well, as a look into what's possible and really challenge our preconceived notions of reality. And that's really what this whole place is about. There's part of it that really ingrains in you, hey, this is the way this works, but there's a real massive part of it, this bigger, it feels like truth. It just feels like a mystery that's woven into the fabric of the blanket of reality. But it's so exceptional. But you have to flex it like a muscle. You need to tune yourself to it. You've got to, block out the old to receive the new, the law of compensation, right? And so this idea of it being exclusively for someone is accurate to a degree, in the sense that if you're out looking to have that type of experience, subconsciously or not, consciously or not, rather, then you'll have it. And if you're not a vibrational match for it, or it's not something that is in your wheelhouse of perception, the believability of any of it, or if you're even scared of having the incidents, even though you're very excited about it, but you wouldn't due to scrutiny or to what would my partner say or any of those things, and you will absolutely repel the experience. It's a fascinating example, even in just psychology, whenever you look at this, because what I've come to notice, again, it's not, I don't feel it's one thing. I feel it's, or many things rather. I feel it's one thing with many different faces. And how it presents to you, just like anything in your reality, is something for you. It's a gift. So for some people, it inspires them to move to their greater highest. To some folks, it gets them out of a toxic relationship because that's the thing that splits them off and makes the other partner feel that they've gone crazy and things like this. And that's actually the best mechanism in which they could finally get away from that person, even though they'd been given tons of signs before and maybe never would have had an encounter like that. But that was the thing that shook them up, just shy of having a car wreck, having a couple limbs amputated, and then going, oh, that was the wake up call. Got it. So there, I feel sort of interim steps here that invite you into a greater opportunity, a greater experience. You're gifted with these constantly. Some people take themselves up on them, and some people bat them away like a batter at a batting cage. Just every opportunity, everything that comes to them, and they'll bat these things away. And there are so many levels before you see Bigfoot, that there are so many bats away that they don't ever get to Bigfoot. You need to come here. You need to maybe have a weird thing. You got to see some hair. You got to have a friend that had an interesting experience that you need to believe or not. There are so many like levels that will get you to go deeper. If you get there and now you're no longer friends with that person, then maybe that's another one you just batted out of the park away from your experience. And then when you do this, you'll just stop getting the things that you don't want, because you're not going to be a match for things you don't want. Think about things you've learned in your own life, lessons you've learned. They don't continue to pop up once you've learned them. You don't need training wheels on your bike once you've figured out balance, because then they actually not only don't serve you anymore, but they hinder your freedom of mobility in the future. So just like that, you sitting here paying attention to something that you've batted away many times, the universe or your higher self, however you, the energetic field that generates your reality, that offers you experiences, is just simply going to say, got it. They're not into it. Got it. And maybe it's something, though, that you're swung back around, like you said, full circle. I was a musician for 12 years. That guitar behind me went to China. We went all over the US. We did all sorts of cool stuff, and just dropped it, absolutely dropped it. And then came back about 10 years later. And now I've got picking the guitar back up. There's some stuff moving on that end, and music's been reintroduced into my life. And it's an interesting thing to where now it's so much more relevant now that I'm looking into the cymatic stuff, and there's so many healing frequencies and music and all of these things. And it turns out I've been tuning my guitar to 432 or down anyway, like the whole time. And I didn't know why. I thought that sounded better with the strings on that guitar for my voice, I sing flat, all that. And so I had intentionally changed the tuning anyway, which is something I would learn about 10 years later. I just thought it sounded better. I didn't know the reasons why, but now that it's re-greeted me, or I've come full circle again, it's nice. It's like, oh, okay, I get it. I get all the relevance of all the things. Why was I so obsessed with Coast to Coast AM? When I just like at 18 years old, right after I moved out of the house, I was just on my own. I was out, and why was I so attracted to those ideas and that style of conversation and that way? And why did it make me feel that way? Well, now look what I'm doing. I'm facilitating something like that for people as well. I mean, our members program is called Expansive Insiders because of the Coast to Coast Insiders program that they have. It's an homage. It's a nod, just because it's woven into the fabric. But why was that so important back then? I put all of that down for like 10 years. And then just like pulling out an old box or something and dusting it off, it came back, but I mean, with a vengeance. And now it's just a full embodiment. But I'm so grateful I had all of that ready to go, even though I took a detour and said, I'm going to do the real thing for a while. I'm going to drink more. I'm going to have a mortgage, get married, all of these things. But again, all those things were awesome. I've since quit drinking 2 years. My wife and I have never been stronger, and I could not love that woman more. And then our place that we have with the mortgage, a 12-acre ranch we got for like nothing 8 years ago. And so now it's what everybody wants, and we're set. Like everything that happens exactly when it's supposed to. And especially with something like the paranormal phenomena, anything like that, it's all such a perfectly timed little just mwah, from the universe, just like a here you go.